Vivian goes, oh, she can't see.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Meeting we're in session. So just to quiet down.
Who's this?
He's clearing up something. We should wait for him. Unless we want to go ahead and move it.
We're waiting on that training. Special
Microwave here.
come back.
There he is. Oh, what's happening now? It's scared us.
Oh, I'm
Already
already
have
happy.
good news to say we'll change something.
Got to bring champagne to make it happen.
All right, we're on item number 2, which is a request of Kerry and Justin Van Blackham to rezone a portion of property located at 2424 Brownelton Avenue Southwest, official tax map number 1470301, from ROS Recreation and Open Space District to MXPUD, which is Mixed Use Plan Unit Development District. Subject to the development plan, Kerry and Justin Van Blackham, petitioners, are the spokesperson. There is an ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance to rezone a portion of the property located at 2424 Bramilton Avenue Southwest, bearing official tax map number 1470301, from ROS Recreation and Open Space District to MXPUD Mixed Use Plan Unit Development District, subject to the development plan, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
All right, thank you. It must be noted that the City Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0 on this matter. At this time, I want to recognize the Van Blackhams who are here. All right, for any comments you have, or you just want to respond to questions that may come up. Or are you representing them, sir?
Yes, sir. Compton Middle, I'm representing the Van Blackhams, and Mr. Rife will have a few words to share with you, and then we're going to make ourselves available for questions.
Okay.
And we can elaborate at that time.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Richard Rife. My wife Luann and I reside at 2301 Laburnum Avenue in the city of Roanoke. In the spirit of full disclosure, I want you to know that I am Justin Van Blericum's stepfather, and I'm also the unpaid architect for this project. First off, I want to applaud Roanoke City Council and Roanoke City School Board by extension for your respecting the First Amendment rights of its citizens. I appreciate your willingness to hear our comments from your citizens rather than enacting rules, as Roanoke County has recently done, that work to discourage citizen comments during its governmental proceedings. The opponents of this project have made a number of statements that are misleading, inaccurate, and inflammatory, and I'd like to address a few of those comments. It's been stated that the Van Blaricums have not done their due diligence to determine the structural condition of the building and intend to tear it down. This is not correct. Structural engineer Nick Brash and I have conducted an inspection of the areas of the building that can be easily accessed, and we listed several of the building's structural problems in our rezoning application. We also found evidence of an ongoing insect infestation. In order to determine the severity of the insect infestation, we need to open up areas of the walls and the ceilings to look at the soundness of the wall structure and roof structure above. We've not done this yet because the Van Blaricums don't own the building. And if we would do that necessary destruction to a publicly owned building, that's what's called vandalism. And we're not really interested in that. It's been stated that there's no guarantee the public will have access to the half-acre portion of the site designated as Area B on the development plan. This is not correct. The development plan clearly states that a park or playground are permitted uses on Area B. Let me repeat that. A park or playground are permitted uses on Area B. Ms. Cathcart has stated that she has over 1,000 signatures on a petition opposing the project. This is a misleading statement. She neglects to point out that over 600 of the signatures date back to the 2016 proposal by Laura Katz to rezone the property for residential use. Had she and Mr. McGuire truly wanted to get a read on how the neighborhood residents felt about this proposal, they simply could have scheduled a membership vote of this proposal as secretary and president of the neighborhood association, respectively. That's what was done in 2016 with Laura Katz's proposal. Their refusal to allow the residents to vote on this matter is one of the primary reasons they were recently removed from their leadership positions in the Granite Court Neighborhood Association. Ms. Cathcart has stated the development plan is not in adherence with a comprehensive plan. This is not correct. The rezoning application cites 10 different policies in the comprehensive plan that are supported by the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think my 3 minutes are up, so I'd ask you respectfully to vote in favor of this rezoning application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to now open the public hearing. And
Mr. Mayor, before we start the public hearing, if I could address perhaps some issues that I think that we've heard previously that might clarify some things.
yes, sir.
I just want to make clear to the public that the contract places a restriction on the building that shall not be, and it's quote, raised, demolished, or removed in whole or in part without the prior approval of the seller, which is the city. To make it perfectly clear that that would require council, I've spoken with Mr. Biddle, and he's agreed that within the deed itself, we will say city council, as opposed to just seller or city. Therefore, making it extremely clear that it won't be demolished unless this council or the council sitting at the time of the request approves it. That would be just a simple majority, but it would still require council to take action. So I just wanted that clarified. I thought that might address some concerns that perhaps some of the public speaking might have, and I thought that might be of help.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right. Madam Clerk, can you call on those citizens who signed to
Sure,
sign up to speak?
yes. Gary Bowman, and I will call these two at a time. Gary Bowman and Owen McGuire.
Good evening.
My name's Gary Bowman. I'm a lawyer. I live on Wright Road, which is within walking distance of the park. I've used the park since I was 14. I walk in the park nearly every day. I'm very familiar with the cottage, at least from the outside, having seen it every day for at least 12 years now. Mr. Spencer did take the wind out of my sails a little bit, which he has done in court before as well. Because one of the main concerns I had was precisely the concern that he addressed, which is that there are provisions of this contract that if the contract goes forward, but there are provisions of the contract that allow the city to consent to things that the public, including me, very much oppose. And the word consent is really not defined in the contract. The process for the city giving consent is not defined in the contract, and that's very much a problem. Now, one of the biggest issues was that issue of consent and the process of how consent would be given if the cottage was demolished. I think at least for me, Mr. Spencer's concern, or Mr. Spencer's comment addresses my concern about that. However, there's another aspect of the contract that is precisely the same issue, and maybe Mr. Spencer and Mr. Biddle will consent to change the contract to address this as well. But right now, the contract allows the Van Blaricom's to assign the contract before closing with the consent of the city. And it also says, which I assume was intended to be written, to be put in the contract because it's very explicitly says that the city may not withhold that consent unreasonably. So there is at least a contemplation that this contract will be assigned. And so the gentleman who spoke here at the beginning, he talked about what the Van Blaricom's intentions are. It really may not matter what the Van Blaricom's intentions are, because if the ordinance is approved, and the Van Blaricom's assign the contract, and as a lawyer, frankly, I fully expect that would happen, because they're right now personally on the contract, and they're going to be personally liable for this business operation. They're going to assign the contract, and the assignees are going to decide what to do. They can decide to demolish it with the city's consent, although that would have to come back to council. They can decide to operate a drive-through coffee shop, which the Van Blaricom's may not. They may say they're not interested in that, but the assignees may choose to do that. And a drive-through coffee shop running the traffic through the park and on Brambleton Avenue, that'll be a significant problem. So I urge Mr. Spencer, Mr. Biddle, and council to not go forward with this contract until the same language is applied to the assignment clause that's applied to the demolition clause. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the assignment language as a transactional attorney is in every contract. It's in every performance agreement you do. It's for the exact reason that Mr. Bowman mentioned, that an individual will assign it to an LLC. In fact, Ms. Cathcart made that point at our last appearance, that she thought it would be irresponsible if they didn't do that. It's very common that you would assign it to an LLC, and it'll be an LLC that the Van Blaricom's own and control. But that is the intent. That's what will be done. I would also point out that procedurally, we're not here for the contract. We're here for the rezoning. We have gone back and amended the contract before to try to accommodate public concerns, but today we're here on the rezoning.
And Mayor, on the rezoning, any concern about a drive-through? This application is for a PUD, Planned Unit Development. If it's not in the plan, you can't do it. And there's no drive-through in the plan. So guess what? You can't have a drive-through there. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, now, I'm gonna,
I don't think it's quite fair that there's an immediate rebuttal. I mean, I disagree with these comments, but there's an immediate rebuttal which we can't respond to.
Well, not a court.
well, yeah,
We're not a court.
can I allow him to comment, or we want to be here all night with this going back and forth, but, okay. All right. We'll move on next, give me our next speaker, and we'll come back to Mr. Bowman.
Owen McGuire.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you. My name's Owen McGuire. I've lived next door to the proposed development property for 39 years. I'm here to talk about the sale of the land for $10, an acre, 1.1 acre of lands for $10. As I mentioned earlier today, we have signed petitions, over 1,000 people who have asked that that type of deal not go through. There's two, and I also want to address the amendments to the zoning, the second zoning request. One has to do with the 0.5 acres that they say is going to be treated like recreational open space, but it's going to be zoned commercial. So everybody needs to be aware of that. It just seems to be a game that they're playing with this property. The other one is the city's first right of refusal to repurchase the property, which I think everyone knows that the city would never even consider that. So the most concerning thing is the possibility that the property could be demolished based on the statement that they made in their application to the zoning commission. The city attorney has said, oh, that's not true, but yet it's there in writing, and it contradicts what has already been applied for in the past. So in the 11th hour, again, they come up with this request to be able to destroy the property if they have to and rebuild. A couple things in their zoning application, there were falsehoods and misleadings that I'd like to address. One, they say that that park, part of the park is not well used. Well, it's a beautiful buffer area, and many parks around the city have beautiful buffer areas that don't necessarily need to be developed. Highland, Eureka, Fallon, Lakewood, Wasena being just a few of those. They also say that their development's in harmony with the city's comprehensive plan. It is not. As a matter of fact, that's what you'll be voting on, is an exception to the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. You must have an exception for them to move forward with their project. They say they talk about they want it to be like the Green Goat. Well, they say they want a coffee shop, but yet they want to have an eating and drinking establishment, which I think is at their end game. So, finally, it is not in congruence with the Grand Court Neighborhood Association plan, which calls for it to remain Fisburn Park, to remain Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leon Vinci, Frida Cathcart.
Good evening, Your Honor, Mayor, members of the City Council, and other guests here tonight. My name is Dr. Leon Vinci, and you may recall I was here recently in support of the City Climate Plan a few days ago. As a 30-year professional in city and county government in public health and environment, I'm here to address tonight keeping the Fisburn Park whole and intact. In my capacity as a public health officer, I was responsible for the safety and public health of the local citizenry across multiple jurisdictions. As such, standards and regulations for safe food and clean establishments was an important part of my charge, along with protecting our environmental resources and improving community health status. These duties that I had included reviewing design and construction of food operations in conformance with state codes and FDA regulations, much as the local health department does today here. Thus, looking at the small house in question on the Fisburn Park parcel and understanding the level of work and disruption required to the building's integrity and the historical aspects as well, but for the cabin, in order to make it code-ready and to become a food operation, to me, strongly suggests major damage, if it even can occur. Thus, I question that the initial basis of this proposal to make it a food establishment in conformance with state and federal laws for food safety. Has the council had anyone look at that? Has the health department gone in and done a walkthrough to see if the installation of what's needed to make it a food establishment can happen within that particular location? On a secondary note, and moving briefly from health code issues to the park and the green area preservation, I have one short note, and that is some of you all of you have received 2 or 3 correspondences from me in the last 3 or 4 days that had some scientific and technical reports attached to them. A lot of that was already part of your old record, but I just wanted to share that again. I wasn't sure I was going to be here tonight. So, in light of all these considerations, and when I do the math, it's a no-brainer for me that you will not change the zoning tonight. To sum it up, a lot like the school proposal that you heard earlier, that plan enhances the school footprint of the site. This plan, in this case, you need to protect the park by keeping it whole and by preserving our park and the environment of the whole neighborhood. As always, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's supposed to be like a light, a pointer light on this. Am I pointing it the wrong way? Maybe I'm pointing it the wrong way. There, okay. I just wanted to make sure I had it pointed the right way, so when I do it. I wasn't ready to start yet. I was going to do the introduction. Okay. Well, when you all amended the application, extended the contract in June, it was touted that there was going to be a compromise that was acceptable to the people. I don't see it in this application, the zoning application. It still rezones the entire 1.1 acres mixed PUD with a voluntary approximate half acre of the recreation open space. And this use that you can use it for playgrounds and stuff, it doesn't mean the public's going to have the right to access it. That's the next thing on the agenda, is exempting vacating the public's right to use the land and making it where you're going to exempt it from the comprehensive plan, which shows that it's not in alignment with the comprehensive plan, because otherwise why would you have to exempt it? So, that's really important. The other thing that's important about this with the recreation open space is that's not a change from the zoning application you all rejected in May, because there wasn't any planned development there. It was already explained to you that you have to be specific about the development that you're going to have. And not only that, but I and one of the council members suggested this is the right place for the parking area except for the ADA because of the long riparian buffer here. A soil scientist did a site evaluation and said this is too close to the property line and it's against the state regulations right now where it is. So we already know at least what's being rendered here isn't up to code. Where's it going to go? This is not ready for being considered to be passed at this point. There's too many incongruencies. The Parks and Rec, so this contrary to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Neighborhood Plan. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board sent you all a letter saying, please don't sell the house or the land. The Roanoke Valley Preservation Foundation has asked you not to sell the house before. And there's serious questions. It is not fiction, this new clause in the zoning application. The historic caretaker's cottage, which is badly deteriorated, will be renovated and preserved if found to be structurally sound. That's a question. You all should know that answer before you rezone this property. That's a very serious question that needs to be answered. And this eating and drinking establishment, the city code defines that as the sale of beer, wine, or alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises. It was over 200 neighbors in our neighborhood signed the petition. But the reason why we focus on the land and not on the house, because there's a lot of support for a coffee shop. But when I asked them about would this be an appropriate place for a Green Goat or a bar restaurant, they said, the vast majority said no. And the public has not had that community engagement about that. And that's not fair about this. We haven't talked about what would happen if they weren't able to restore the house. And the deed had already been conveyed. What happens? There's no specifics. And if you don't have specifics in the contract, you already heard the lawyers talking to each other. That's what happens. It goes to court, and we don't have any protection. And it's your fiduciary responsibility to protect the public's interest. I mean, I understand why the Van Blaercones and their attorneys put that in to protect the Van Blaercones office, but you need to protect our interests in this. At the very least, table this until these incongruencies can be worked out so there's clarity about what's actually happening here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Rachel Thompson, Shelley Himmel.
Mayor Leah, and City Council members, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I am an attorney, a local attorney, and a business owner. I am the past president of the Salem-Roanoke County Bar Association. I am the current programs chair of the Federal Bar Association Immigration Law Section, and I currently teach adoption law at Liberty University School of Law. I come today for two reasons. First, as a character witness for Jetty and Carrie Van Blaerkom, and second, to reject and renounce the false claims of racism. I'm going to start with the latter. I can't talk about racism without getting a little teary-eyed. It's a serious issue in our country and which our country has struggled with for centuries. And in my lifetime, I have seen the promise of unity and the beacon of hope through racial reconciliation at our fingertips. But it takes all of us to get there. In my lifetime, I've also seen destruction, disunity, and division swallow any reconciliation progress made. But it takes all of us to renounce it. That's why I'm here before you today, to renounce the destruction, the disunity, and the division that has emerged in the name of racism. It is my understanding that based on all the information gathered, a few people are alleging that the Van Blaerkoms are racist because they wanted to attract the right people to the neighborhood. Since the Van Blaerkoms are white, the authors of this false claim have made an illogical and untrue determination that the Van Blaerkoms, therefore, must be racist. The authors of these false claims have publicly disseminated mass emails that state that the Van Blaerkoms are racist. There is not one other minutia of corroborating evidence that has been brought forth to substantiate that claim. There is not any other evidence that someone could bring forth to substantiate that the Van Blaerkoms are racist because it doesn't exist. Racism hurts, and false claims to racism hurt more. False claims to racism make it harder for when there are actual, real, substantiated claims to racism. No one will believe those real claims because we've cried wolf too many times. Sadly for our community, someone has cried wolf here, and I question the motives of those making these baseless rumors. We are all in a crucial time in our country where we can turn the time on racism once and for all, but that cannot happen when self-aggrandizing individuals continue to cry wolf. For someone to flippantly call another racist and spread lies about racism tells me one thing, that they don't know what it's like to be a victim of racism. That they don't understand that a false soundbite to further personal agendas actually stunts any forward progress toward reconciliation. I have known the Van Blaerkoms for 8 years. I've known Carrie very personally. They are kind-hearted and generous. They are of good character, and the way they go about their lives is admirable. I know Carrie's family, and she has not once been dismissive or made me feel disregarded because of the color of my skin. She's been a good friend and have walked closely through life together. Therefore, I ask that you approve this ordinance, that you carefully consider every recommendation, and I thank you for your time.
Shelley Himmel.
it's at least interesting that the city attorney felt it appropriate this afternoon to deem a straightforward reading of the party's contract clause to be a fiction and to accuse me of propagating a fiction when he chose to read the precise clause to you that I read this evening. At any rate, disagreements between attorneys about the meaning of contracts are common, and they, in fact, form the basis of just about every piece of contract litigation ever entered into. But that doesn't justify or support the council's conduct in vilifying me for pointing out that the contract does provide for demolition of a historic building on the tract in question and sets out the circumstances under which this can take place. If he felt it was inappropriate, he should have excised it from the contract during negotiations. He didn't do so, so it appears that it's in the contract for a reason, which is to say the building can be demolished despite the city's insistence that the primary reason for this contract was to see that the building was preserved. As far as the contract amendments that were entered into in June, they are notoriously a cause of unintended consequences, and these appear to be in that category. The contract amendments to Section 4 omit subsection 4D, the clause that expressly bars applicants and their business from using Fisburn Park's parking lot. If this omission was not intentional and the bar still holds, either the city or applicants should adjust the contract language accordingly of the amendments. If it was intentional and it is proposed that applicant be allowed to use the park parking for his business, it at least ought to be made clear to the city and to the citizens who are going to be charged with the expenses for this. We are entitled to an explanation of why we not only have to donate this business's building site, but have to donate a parking lot for it as well and continue to support it. Finally, the right of first refusal in the contract contains language which contradicts the express terms of the contract which denominate conveyance of the property to anyone other than the individual owners to be a major breach of the contract. The ability to recover a remedy depends on the willingness to pursue that remedy against all odds, and it doesn't appear that the city is intent on pursuing any remedies since it has abandoned all remedies in the contract so far.
Will be Cathcart?
So he was called into work and he was going to read a soil scientist's testimony into the record, and somebody else has volunteered to do that if the mayor will allow that to happen. He signed up just to read, the soil scientist is in Europe, so he just signed up to read that into the record. It's like a minute to do, but there's a volunteer that was willing to read that.
Has he signed up to volunteer, has he?
He signed up to read the testimony into record
He's
because
still
Will
here?
called him in, so he's not able to be here, but another volunteer said that she's willing to read that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm willing to hear it again. I mean, it's 3 minutes, might take less than this back and forth.
Pardon me?
I'm willing to hear that soil report again. It's 3 minutes. It might take less time than this back and forth.
Well, are we allowed to do that?
Mayor's prerogative.
All right, since the council member wants to hear that, we'll be let it hear it. All right?
If you'll just give us your name for the record.
Hello, thank y'all for seeing me, Mayor and City Council. As you can see, this is from Frida's son. This isn't from me, but I'm reading it for her. So, Soilworks, Inc. was hired to perform a brief site assessment for the landscape and potential land use. Conclusion, the impact to the soils from the parking lot too close to the property line is that the stormwater runoff will have less buffer area to be absorbed by the soils before leaving the property and reaching the creek bed. That is, a parking lot stormwater runoff would not have anything to prevent erosive water from leaving the separate property and onto its neighbor, Fisburn Park. The problem with more water flowing into fill material soil is that it can become heavy, wet, unstable, and slip down the hill. That material soil is between the house and the pond area. That defies erosion and sediment control regulations, which do not allow erosive water and sediment into a neighbor's land. She also provided the following information. The old caretaker's house at 2424 Bramilton is situated on a stream hill with steep slopes in the front with broad roadside level areas where neighbors do safely play away from the traffic. The trees shade the ground for a comfortable cooling effect in the heat, and the trees help absorb storm water and hold soil in place. The land rises gently, approximately 10% from the end of the caretaker's house for another couple hundred feet, and is mostly mowed grass. The water resources are protected from sediment now. Trees grow where the old pond was, and mowed areas maintain an unmowed area buffer around the creek and undisturbed riparian buffer. Stormwater runoff as overland flow of water to the Murray Run tributary creek from the 1.1 acre at issue is absorbed by the soils in place now. No erosion gullies were found during a field survey. She has also expressed concern about the proposed placement of a community garden. As is, trees are holding soil in place in several places where gardens would remove them. Steep slopes that are disturbed cannot hold ground. Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to find out if they identified who the person was they were reading for.
Oh, that's Rosemary St. Jake's.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure we had it in the record.
I was reading for Willoughby Cathcart, reading a letter from
That's-
D. Nolan that we got by email.
Okay,
So,
that's what I
yeah.
wanted to make sure.
Same letter we got earlier today.
Okay.
Read to us.
I wanted to
Yes.
make sure who the letter actually was, not who was reading it, but who it was
Yes,
from.
it's the same letter we got earlier today.
Thank you.
Are you
And-
clear on that, Madam Clerk?
No, who was this
It's
from?
from the letter we got earlier today.
And Mayor, just in case council has any questions, Ian Shaw is here from Stormwater Department. He's uniquely qualified in that he's both an engineer and former planner.
Okay.
Our next speaker? Andrew Zabo and Dwayne Howard.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm Andrew Sabo. I live at 901 Carrington Avenue Southwest here in the city of Roanoke. I'm a frequent user of Fisburn Park, and I'm very familiar with the layout of the park and all the trails. And I'm here to speak in support of the rezoning to allow the Van Blair-Cons to open the coffee shop and to renovate the caretaker's cabin to turn it into a coffee shop. The revised deal with the Van Blair-Cons that was done back in June, I think addressed a lot of the concerns that a lot of the community members had about, especially with the right of the city, first right of refusal, if the deal falls through and the Van Blair-Cons for some reason have to sell the property, because there was a lot of concern about that initially. What would happen if they sold it to some developer and they would decide to build something else? And there are so many protections and restrictions built into this, into the potential contract that would protect the property from being developed into something that the neighborhood would be against. Also, the property, the 1.1 acres is on the periphery of the park. It's a very little used area right now, and the caretaker cabin right now is an eyesore and a safety hazard. because it's in danger of just collapsing unless somebody does something with it. And there have been no legitimate proposals done before the Van Blair Cons came along with their proposal on the coffee shop. Also, the green space issue, this won't significantly affect the green space because the existing trees, unless there's a health issue with the tree, will still remain in place. And the footprint of the structures will pretty much stay the same because they're going to use the same structure as long as they can repair it in order to accommodate the coffee shop. And that's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pass.
All right. Next speaker is Sandra Zabo.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Sandra Zabo, and I live in the city of Roanoke at 901 Carrington Avenue Southwest, which is within walking distance of Fisburn Park. I believe Fishburne Park is owned by the city, and it seems that the neighbors that live closest to the park are the ones concerned in controlling the opposition's voice. I am a neighbor of the Van Blair Cons, so what? My husband and members of my family and I still use the park. I want to enjoy the park, and I would enjoy it a lot more if I could get a cup of coffee or a cappuccino while I relax, waiting for him to finish his longer walk. The coffee shop would not only bring neighbors together, it also brings revenue to the city and a place where Patrick Henry students could work, learning valuable life lessons on making money, customer service skills, etc. I have personally read lies about this project. I have been attacked by certain members of the public for my opinion, but what I haven't heard is the Van Blair Cons doing any of that. They have taken the high road when dealing with the city, the public, and even ignored the lies, including allegations of racism, that have been spoken, written, etc. about them personally and the business of Fishburne Park. Some people have questioned the parking spaces for the patrons and or the staff, and will they have access to the public spaces of the park? One thing that immediately came to mind is they are public spaces, and everyone is entitled to them. There was talk about renovating the cottage to be used for classes under a previous suggestion, which when questioned if the attendees of those classes would be allowed to park in public spaces, the response was yes. So what is the difference? It appears it matters who is submitting the proposal. I fully support and will be a frequent visitor of the park and a frequent customer of Fishburne Park. I would actually probably be at the park more often as I can get the cappuccino there and support a local business bringing revenue. I recently read that a member of the public who is a former in official capacity is writing emails to the members of the public that the goal of the coffee shop would be a restaurant bar due to the fact that food trucks or music might be there. Music and food trucks do not make a bar. Plus, there are laws that prohibit alcohol and loud music after certain times and with the zoning of the property. Considering the coffee shop hopes to employ Patrick Henry students, this idea of turning into a bar is ridiculous. After listening to other speakers, especially those that use their positions, some within the city, council, or state, I often wonder if they're speaking on behalf of that entity or as a citizen. If they're speaking on behalf of their positions within the entity or government, I'd like to request via FOA the minutes to confirm the positions the speaker has taken is the consensus of the committee, the entity as a whole. Just because you're a member of something does not mean that you can abuse your position of power nor intimidate or falsely influence others' opinion, which has been done in every phase of this proposal by certain opposition members. Some of the opposition continues to represent themselves as leader of an association which they were voted out of and are using the assets of that organization. Again, I'm a citizen of the city, and I fully support the proposal to allow the Van Blair Cons to purchase the caretaker college and the rezoning of that property. Thank you.
Candace Verway and Richard Reif.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I want to thank you for your vote the last time to get me here this time. I'm not going to repeat with what those other individuals, I suspect you already know I'm pro this park. You're all intelligent people. You all can look at what people's motives are. I can, you can. So I would ask you to be the judge of that. What is somebody's motive? What really concerns me, and I live in Grandin Court, and I have for about 20 years, is what has happened to my neighborhood. I actually want to move. I am appalled. I am particularly appalled, like two other people have said, about people in my neighborhood being charged with racism. Where an article is placed in a black newspaper here suggesting that, and that article was produced on May 7th, saying there is outright racism and the city should not proceed with this deal. I was at that May 2nd meeting. I sat in the back. I didn't see anybody astonished like the article says. In fact, I have a recording of that entire meeting. And at the appropriate time, I'll share it. It did not happen, and I'm appalled that somebody would do that, period, in my neighborhood. I encourage you to put an end to this, and please vote to accept it. Make sure the documents are all legal and signed, and let's just have our coffee shop. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. That's the last speakers, Mayor,
So
on
that's
this matter.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask my colleagues if they have any comments or discussions. All right, go on once, go on twice.
I do. Someone texted me that the live feed ended, but I asked, is that true? And I just want to make sure. Yeah, and they haven't replied to me, so I don't know what this means. I can just check Facebook myself, too.
What was your question?
Someone texted me that the live feed ended. They haven't replied to me when I asked, for how long? And I just want to make sure before we continue with public business that, yeah, let's see what they said. Just to make sure that we don't. Is this still being
Yeah, it's still being recorded on RVTV.
It said the live for council randomly ended on Facebook. Why did it do anything? I mean, the public access.
I mean, what's the question on it?
It's on RVTV.
It's on RVTV. Yeah, they could get it.
It's a Facebook Live.
We can proceed with
Might be there.
Well, I'm happy to make comments, but I'll wait for other people first in case it comes up first.
I don't have any comments.
I don't think he comments but you. Nobody else is asking for it.
Okay, oh, well. Absolutely wonderful. All right, well, I didn't plan these all out and thought, and I've gone back and forth on what I think about all of this for months since, right, since prior to being on council.
Can you hear now?
No, can't hear him.
Speaking to Mike.
Is the microphone working?
Yeah, they're working.
I hear something.
Use mine.
Is this better? Yeah, hers is a lot better. They want to silence me. Gone back and forth about all of this tons of times in my mind prior to being on council. I've heard about this coffee shop so much. There is one person I know every time I see him, all he says is the word coffee, to the point where it made it into my dreams. And I tell him about that when that happened. But this has been a very, very long process. I mean, it started with when I was on the Parks and Rec Board and against the concept of selling parkland. I still generally am. But we have gone through an immense timeline that have gotten us to this point where we are today, where council has considered contracts, amended contracts. We had a zoning that failed, but ultimately from what I gathered and my opinion of the situation, there was at least a majority of council that wanted to move forward with something. They wanted to see some kind of resolution. And at that, we had to start figuring out, like, what does that look like? And it's not perfect. All of these amendments are not things that I would have sought completely personally. I would have changed it to a lease and had the city run it, but I just don't see that as something that's happening in the immediate future for the city to take on. I haven't seen it happening in the past. The last time I spoke on this, I talked about my concern for future councils and what they will do. And then I voted no, but in this surprise, because I thought that it was going to pass. It just didn't have the votes counted. I'll tell you, I don't have them counted tonight, but I have an idea of where this is going. But where we've gotten now, even earlier today, I brought up to make sure there are concerns about could the house be demolished. And if the house is going to be demolished or not, that was the biggest concern I've had, especially as recent topics have come up regarding other historic properties that we have in other parks. And I want to make sure that we preserve that home. Having the city attorney make sure for certain that in order for, now it doesn't stop it completely, but it would have to come back to a vote for council if that house is going to be demolished. All this will be held personally, either us or some future council, personally responsible if that is the case. But I don't expect it to be taken down. I don't expect the Von Blair comes to go that route. Honestly, if they've been willing to go through all of this process to be able to have their coffee house, I think that they're going to be tremendously successful. But I also expect that this business is going to have its challenges. It's not going to be perfect. They may run into issues with parking, they may run into issues with customers, sourcing, even in the construction, but I also expect they've stayed through all of this to figure this out to this point. I expect they're going to continue to figure it out. And at some point you have to realize when you're beat. I mean, there's only so many steps that we can take and have this go around and come back again, maybe have a council that's not as thoughtful as this one to consider it. But it's my hope that they will be completely successful in this, that they will move forward to continue to invest in that park and other parks. Just a quick idea, Star Hill has like a beer where every beer, $1 goes back to the parks. Do something like coffee for that. Give us more money for our parks. And, you know, a year ago I would not have been on this side at all because I would like to see parkland preserved. But seeing how far they've been willing to go, how far this council's been willing to go, I hope it'll be successful in it, and they've earned my vote in this instance. I'm done. As long as it made it on some recording somewhere.
All right, any further comments? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
All right. Ms. White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee?
Aye. And the ordinance passes. Too late now.
Was when Jim said, whatever, no, Sunday is Jesus' day, but I just said, this needs to end. And I spoke to someone who's walking the street after that and asked him what he thought. Someone who's just walking on the street, someone Dave Castleton.
What's this next item? This is Fisburn Park,
Fine,
huh?
either way it turns out.
Should amendments should be.
That's great. Thank you for all of the help there, but it just, I'm gonna turn off my phone for like 48 hours.
Okay, we're ready, Mayor.
Okay. Item number 3 is a request of the city of Roanoke to consider an amendment to City Plan 2040, the city's comprehensive plan, to vacate the public use of a portion of Fisburn Park and to release the public's right to use such portion of Fisburn Park, being an approximately 1.1 acre portion of city-owned property located at 2424 Bramilton Avenue Southwest. Official tax map number 147031. And readopting and ratifying previous amendments to the City Plan 2040, the city's comprehensive plan. Catherine Gray is the agent spokesperson. There's an ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance amending City Plan 2040, the city's comprehensive plan, by permanently vacating and releasing the public's right to use an approximately 1.1 acre portion of Fisburn Park, bearing official tax map number 1470301, readopting and ratifying previous amendments to City Plan 2040, the city's comprehensive plan, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
All right. It's noted that the City Planning Commission recommends approval of this Plan 6-0. And at this point in time, Catherine Gray, Catherine, we'll recognize you for any comments you'd like to make.
As you mentioned, this comes to you with the recommendation, unanimous recommendation of the Planning Commission, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. We're going to open a public hearing, and Madam Clerk, is there any citizens wishing to be heard?
Not on this matter, sir.
All right. Well, we're going to close the public hearing and ask my council colleagues if they have any comments or discussion.
I do.
All right.
Just as I understand the title of this, that we are vacating this from public use. However, I just want to make clear, and I guess I must ask a question on Veracom, so the representative, that my understanding of the plan that is put forward is that in that area Plan B, that the public will still be able to access that generally and understand that you'll be maybe getting whatever business insurance that you need for whatever liabilities that carries. Now, the public will not have access to your business like when it's closed as they want because it's not public property, but even though this is titled vacating public property, they will still have full use to that area, Plan B around your property so much as it doesn't interfere with your business. Thank you.
I see some frown faces, but we're ready to vote, Madam Clerk.
Ms. White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the ordinance passes. All right, item number 4 is a proposal of the City of Roanoke to consider the sale of 339 Salem Avenue Southwest, official tax map number 101010-7, a former homeless assistance team het building. There is an ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute the necessary documents providing for the sale and conveyance of 339 Salem Avenue Southwest, official tax map number 1010107 to 339 Salem Partners LLC upon certain terms and conditions, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize the city manager for any comments he has to make on that.
No, the only comment I would make is we've got to this point by issuance of an RFP at your request. So we issued out the request for proposals. We received this proposal, have obviously discussed this with you all in closed session as well as with the applicants, and that is what has brought us to this point, and be happy to answer any questions as you go through this process. Thank you.
And one other clarification. The applicant has requested that they be allowed to make the housing more affordable by amending paragraph 4B11 on page 8 of the contract to include the percentages instead of 50 to 60% AMI, 30 to 60%. and the applicant can speak to council on that issue. So we're actually making it more affordable.
Procedurally, do we need to amend the ordinance?
I don't know that we do need to amend the ordinance, but I needed council to be aware that we will be making that change to the contract.
Yes.
No
All right.
objection here.
All right, we're going to open a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. We'll open a public hearing. Are there any citizens wishing to be heard on this, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. Call the one that they signed up. Call them.
The first speaker, Karen McCoskey Carney, and followed by Joe Nelson.
Vice Mayor Cobb, City Council members, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Independent Living Center, and as you know, we're a private nonprofit organization that assists individuals with disabilities to be independent in the community. We also work with the community to ensure that it's accessible. We are here to support the sale of 339 Salem Avenue to Sycamore Development Company for the purpose of building a very affordable apartment development. One of the services that the center provides is housing assistance. We receive no fewer than 6 to 10 calls per week from individuals with disabilities who are looking for affordable, accessible housing. Senator Kane recently held a housing roundtable, and at that roundtable, the Veterans Administration representative stated that there were currently 17 veterans who had Section 8 vouchers who could not find affordable housing. According to the Center for Health and Research Transformation, the average rent is 127% more than a person with a disability's SSI income, which is only $914 per month. Federal housing assistance designed specifically for people with disabilities has seen a 43% reduction over the last decade. In addition to housing assistance, we also provide transition services. We assist individuals with disabilities who are in nursing homes to return to the community with the services they need. There are people actually languishing in nursing homes simply because there are no affordable, accessible housing units. A November 2020 Planning District Commission housing study reported that there were between 5,226 and 7,200 more affordable units that are required to meet the need. On behalf of City of Roanoke citizens with disabilities, we ask that you approve this project so that individuals with disabilities have an opportunity to live in the community in housing that is both affordable and accessible. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joe Nelson. I'm Director of TAP, This Valley Works, and during the past 4 years, I've been responsible for overseeing emergency eviction prevention and homelessness services in TAP, funded not only by the state, but by the City of Roanoke. In 2022, we received funding from the state of Virginia to contract a study on eviction prevention for the City of Roanoke, and I've handed you some of the findings that I want to highlight. In 2022, the findings showed that in almost all cases, the household size of people needing to rent in the City of Roanoke were 1- and 2-person households. 2/3 were of low income. It also showed that the majority of the housing units available in the City of Roanoke, 41% were 2 bedrooms, 34% were 3 bedrooms, and average median cost or rent was over $800 even as far back as 2019, and now that's well more than $1,000 a month. While at the same time, the ability to pay, which for those of you who have mortgages know and or who rent know, should be no more than 30% of your income, that figure is $740 a month. And so the majority of low-income families inside the city of Roanoke are paying well more than what they should be in order to rent in our community. If you also look at housing stock, what you found for extremely low-income citizens was that we had almost 6,000 who needed rental stock. Almost 6,000 under 30% AMI who needed a place to rent. While at the same time, the city of Roanoke has less than 3,000 units available for those people. The numbers are staggering, and they continue to grow every day. The levels of cost burden are increasing among low-income households. The levels of severe cost burden among extremely low-income households have become dire. People are having to choose between paying rent, buying food, and paying for their prescription meds. Extremely low-income renters are having cost burdens so high that they're sacrificing necessities of life in order to keep a roof over their head. Moving forward to 2022, TAP did its own study. We continue to provide services, although we are not one of the city's primary housing providers. In 2022-23, we served 530 Roanoke City citizens through emergency housing rental. More than 80% had 0 to 125% of the poverty. Domestic violence victims, another 62 people we had to shelter because the shelters were full and they couldn't afford housing. Affordable housing stock is critical to this community. We can't solve the homelessness problem without it. We can't solve the eviction problem without it. We can't solve the violence problem without it. We can't solve the economic development issues without it. Please, please vote to support affordable housing stock. It's the only way to continue to get Roanoke moving forward and to eliminate the crimes and the poverty that we have in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. You and TAP are a very valuable partner for us. Thank you.
Mayor Lee.
Our next
All right.
The next speaker is Virginia Sweet and Frederick Gussler.
Greetings, Mayor Lee, Vice Mayor Cobb, and dedicated and obviously people who can live without sleep council members. My name's Virginia Sweet, and I live on Lakewood Drive in the city of Roanoke. I'm speaking on behalf of Church Women United, some 100 members strong, on the proposed sale of 339 Salem Avenue to developers to build affordable housing units. We support the sale. In February of this year, we applauded you, the City Council, for utilizing the American Rescue Plan to fund building 40 units for people who lived at the 30% or below the area median income. And at that time, Mayor Lee opined that the city couldn't do it all, that developers needed to step forward. And here they have. And it's just wonderful that they're now extending and going to propose that they have some housing for 30% to 60%. That is just incredible. And furthermore, the developers propose building 1 and 2 bedroom units, which most closely align with the greatest community need for housing. Efficiency in 1 bedroom units can accommodate 1 to 2 people, make up only a quarter of the housing stock, even though 1 to 2 people households make up 72% of renters' household. And people who are eligible for a voucher and receive a voucher, if it's a single individual or 2 people, if they can't find a 1-bedroom apartment, then they can't use the voucher. The Salem Avenue site is an outstanding location for persons who have this level of income. Many work in the city and need public transportation, need access to services, and churches and daycares and recreations. Furthermore, the farmers market is within walking distance. It's a walkable community. That's something that the city wants. If people are opposed to this, it may be because they're stereotyping people. And then I contend that these people are making a salary that puts them as servers in restaurants, daycare workers to whom we entrust our children, even maintenance people who work for the city, perhaps. I will say, I think, because I'm running out of time, I really do encourage the city, if they move forward, to move forward with this, and to insist that the CAP be adhered to as much as it can. They can have green spaces and trees and smart surfaces and solar energy. This is a time where you can really show what the city can do by bringing all of these things together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need to take care of some housekeeping before. I don't want to interrupt, Mr.
Yeah, just a minute.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Wilson.
10
Now,
o'clock.
there was a time when we had to stop.
Well, you have to stop or you vote to continue.
Okay.
And we are at that time. That's the housekeeping, I think. If you want to finish this meeting, council can vote to move forward.
Motion to continue
Second.
reluctantly.
All right. Madam Clerk, you need to call the roll.
Okay. Ms. White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye.
Just in time.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for continuing since I've stayed here all evening. Appreciate that. My name is Frederick Gussler, here on behalf of the Roanoke Redevelopment Housing Authority. We just want to lend our support to the project. As previous speakers have mentioned, there is an obvious need for more housing, and in particular, more affordable housing. Previous speaker just mentioned the location. This is a very ideal location in many respects. And want to commend the city staff for working with a really good development team you have for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
That was the last speaker on that matter.
Thank you. That being the last speaker, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask council if they have any comments or discussion. Mr. Walsh.
I think this is very exciting, and especially the change that happened before the meeting where it'll now be extended to people that are at 30% of average median income. That's just amazing. And I want to thank Mr. Cochran for making this a reality. A lot of folks here may not know, but our council is working behind the scenes day and night to try and continue to make more affordable housing here in Roanoke. And when we have development partners like Mr. Cochran, great things like this can happen. I know, calling you Mr., I know it's hard. But, you know, it's so important for our city, as we've heard over and over again tonight. And I'm one of those people that doesn't get very emotional, but thinking about what is about to happen with having affordable housing right next to the bus station, right in downtown, so that we can have workers that work in downtown, live in downtown. It's just going to be a great project, and I really look forward to what comes of this and what you guys do. So thank you again for your partnership, and just know that we are working to continue to build that affordable housing here in the city.
All right.
Brent, would you be willing, your team, to just come up and could you just share briefly what you're excited about regarding this project?
Absolutely. So I'm Chris Vale, here with my business partner Brent Cochran, and Matt Vale. And to summarize, I think the letter we sent kind of explained, and I know there's been some articles about what we're looking to do, but I wanted to bring in the actual Virginia Housing Rental Guide to give you some ideas on numbers. For one bedrooms, what we'd be looking at is a rent range from $389 to $904. For two bedrooms, we'd be $467 to $1084, give or take a few dollars depending on certain things like utility allowance. The median area there at 40 to 50% is $561 to $732 for ones and $673 to $878 for twos. So, far and away below what you're used to seeing downtown. Of course, what we plan to build is 100% in compliance with what you would expect any market rate property to be built. It's a great site for a lot of reasons. It's not a great site for a lot of construction reasons, but we're prepared to go down that path and bring in the appropriate parties to help us with it, and hopefully get awarded some LIHTC credits. So that's our overall plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Pruitt.
I just have a question. This is contingent on success of gaining those credits. Sorry I didn't get through this contract the same diligence as other contracts. What then happens if we hope you're successful? Just what happens in the city's position in this property if that doesn't go through?
So that's truly the only way to make the project work. If we don't get awarded the credits, we would hand the contract back to the city. We wouldn't want to tap the property, prevent any other use or some other plan to happen. If we can't get it done at our best efforts, then we'll just walk away and let you guys take it the way it was.
Would it be appropriate for the city to send something in support, but separately from this vote, of course, so that they're not conflated together?
Well, and it would be, in another example of by giving the property at the obviously below market price, that actually increases our award points in Virginia Housing's eyes because it shows local government support. Of course, a letter goes a long way too, but it does fulfill that initial checkbox.
Thank you.
Are there any more discussion in council? Oh, it's stretching, okay. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. White Boyd? Aye. Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the ordinance passes. I remind council, we have some citizens that have been sitting here for 4 hours, nearly. All right, we go down to other business now. Acceptance of funds from Roanoke County for the shared installation costs of regional gateway sign. This item was tabled at 2 o'clock, at the 2 o'clock session of council, so I need a motion to remove from the table.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye. All right, and it's been moved back on the agenda, and there's a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
All right. An ordinance appropriating funding from the County of Roanoke, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2023-2024 grant fund appropriations and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, is there any discussion?
2 seconds. So, Mayor and Council, this is, and I would have said this earlier if we had gotten to this item, so this is actually an ongoing regional partnership that we've had with Roanoke County, Salem, City of Roanoke, Bonatoc County, and others, orchestrated and directed by VBR. So VBR worked together with all those jurisdictions to identify kind of a regional wayfinding plan. You may recall, in downtown, actually funded the downtown portion of that wayfinding in partnership with the Downtown Foundation, who had kind of provided a challenge grant with that. This is actually an effort to begin funding some of the larger signs that are located on the perimeters of our region coming in. So hopefully, we'll see more of these, and certainly appreciate Roanoke County's participation and partnership in this as we move forward. So, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? No discussion, all right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Pretty?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Do we still have citizens here that signed up?
Yes, we do.
Well, I apologize for this long session that we've had tonight. I thought the presentations were clear, but some things are out of my control, so welcome. How many people do we have?
8.
All right, call them in the order that they signed up.
Okay, I'll call them 2 by 2. Chris Bryant, Laura Hartman.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Chris Bryant, and I have lived in the city for over 40 years. I'm a master gardener, tree steward, and I recently got a copy of the Roanoke City Roanoke City Tree Canopy Report from Dr. Wiseman at Virginia Tech. It covers the 2014-2018 timeframe from the report, and it was generated in February of 2023. It is from the Chesapeake Tree Canopy Network, which is funded through the U.S. Forestry Service. Roanoke City's canopy has fallen to 27.8% of Roanoke City's 27,232 acres. 19 acres were lost to turf, and 28 acres was lost to impervious surfaces, which includes buildings, roads, and parking lots. The impervious surfaces now make up 35.5%, or 9,677 acres. Turf makes up 30.2%, or 8,238 acres. The city tree canopy provides $4.6 million per year in benefits to the city, including air pollution removal of 454,000 tons of particulate matter and CO2 and ozone. It also reduces stormwater runoff by 153.7 millions of water per year. And it sequesters 9,000 tons of carbon back into the tree biomass and into the root systems. But a healthy city needs a minimum canopy cover of at least 40%. And so these benefits would be greatly increased if we could increase our tree canopy to that. Unfortunately, the numbers are masking a fact that a lot of the Roanoke tree canopy is in Mill Mountain and several large forested tracts in Roanoke City, like Evans Springs and Zero Brandon Avenue. Only 2.6% of the tree canopy is covering impervious surfaces, which greatly contributes to the heat island effects, which can raise temperatures 10 to 15 degrees and greatly affects the stormwater management that the trees can do. If we continue to allow the destruction of large tracts of forest and create impervious surfaces, our numbers will be even more threatening. Yes, trees can be planted, but the loss of large trees, which replaced by smaller trees, will not offset that loss. Small trees can take 10 to 15 years to significantly contribute benefits that we are now receiving. The only good aspect of this report is that there is sufficient turf grass where trees can be planted. This is why 2024 should be proclaimed as the year of the tree, so that we can inform the residents of the importance of the tree canopy and also help ask their assistance in planting and replenishing some of Roanoke City's tree canopy. We also need to look at the existing city canopy and save as much as we can. The future of Roanoke depends on it. In 50 years, we will be have a climate similar to Alabama, so we will need all the shade we can get. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Hartman, and I'm bringing you greetings from the Bus Riders of Roanoke Advocacy Group. I want to thank some of you for participating in our Disability Awareness event in July. That was great. I want to tell you about an email that I got yesterday from the Roanoke Refugee Partnership. I'm on their, volunteer list. And the email said, we have a desperate need for transportation. There are 2 young people from Afghanistan who have moved here recently as refugees. They live in the county. They are a 30-minute walk from the nearest bus stop, and they found a good job. But they need help getting to their work, right? These 2 young people, they work in the later evenings, they work on Sundays. That 30-minute walk to the bus stop in the heat is a lot for them. These are some of our newest Roanokers. After the trauma that they experienced in their home country, how welcoming are we being to them? Not welcoming enough, I say. I think that we can do better. Our bus system, Valley Metro, is about to begin a strategic planning process in this fall, in September and October, and they want participation and input from the public, bus riders, and those who don't yet ride our public transit system. What improvements could we implement that might get people onto the bus? In this strategic planning process, I want to ask that you, our City Council, and any others who give input should hold our transit system to high standards. A great city deserves great transit. We should not be satisfied with mediocrity. We should not be satisfied with transit that stops at the county line. We should not be satisfied with transit whose constrained hours fail to serve the workers who need it for evening and weekend shifts. We should not be satisfied with transit that only comes once an hour. We should not be satisfied. A great city deserves great transit. Now, we have not yet been told how we're going to participate in the strategic planning process, but I want to invite everyone to follow us on Facebook at Bus Riders of Roanoke, and we will let you know as soon as we find out how we can raise our voices and be a part of this dreaming process to make this better transit. I also want to note that the Transit Passenger Advisory Committee is looking for new members. So if anyone's interested in that, they should apply at valleymetro.com/TPAC. A great city deserves great transit, but we're not going to get there unless we dream big and raise our voices. We have an opportunity to urge our transit system to take a leap forward into a better future where we can serve our newest Roanokers, serve our refugee neighbors, and the rest of us as well. Everyone is welcome to join the Bus Riders of Roanoke Advocacy Group. We meet at 5:30 p.m. the first Thursday of the month at the Gainsborough Public Library. Thank you for listening.
Normally I wouldn't respond, but I just want to say one thing. Sure. I appreciate your enthusiasm, and we are a great city, and we would love to go beyond the Roanoke County line. Yes. And hopefully you will go to Roanoke County Board of Supervisors and give them that exact same speech so that we will get them on board with us, because we would love to do that.
Yes, thank you.
And our next speakers, Naomi Clements, followed by Deborah Carter.
Well, good evening, Mayor Lee, Vice Mayor Cobb, and members of City Council. I'm sorry to keep you here so late. I'm here today as a citizen of Roanoke and a member of Friends of Evans Spring to ask the City of Roanoke not to rezone the Evans Spring area as commercial and instead acquire it and protect it as a nature preserve. The most important reason to preserve Evans Spring is that the citizens of Roanoke who live near the area want it to be preserved. This message was delivered by the neighborhood residents to the consultants hired by the city to look at the possibility of development of Evans Springs in several community meetings and to the City Council on June 20th, 2023. As you know, Evans Spring is one of the areas that the Black community of Roanoke resettled after the destruction of the Gainsborough neighborhood by urban renewal, 1950s through the 70s. And you know what happened. 1,600 homes, 300 businesses, 25 churches were lost. and a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody and people looked out for each other were shattered. Most residents were not fairly compensated for their property. I know from my conversations with my friends here in Roanoke that the Black citizens of Roanoke feel that loss to this day. It was expressed at community meetings in Northwest Roanoke that development of the Evans Spring area would feel like urban renewal all over again. Two of the developments would result in significant increase in traffic near the area. The increased traffic would be on streets not designed for that level of traffic. Some of the streets that would be affected have no sidewalks. This is a significant safety concern to the residents of the neighborhood around Evans Spring. Evans Spring is one of the last cool spots in Northwest Roanoke and the city at large. It was circled on the map, on the urban heat map, on page 18 of the City of Roanoke Draft Climate Action Plan and cited as a cool spot. The reason it's a cool spot is tree cover. Development of the area would undoubtedly involve removal of some trees. These cool spots are becoming more and more important as temperatures rise. This would raise temperature not just in Roanoke, Northwest Roanoke, but the entire city. The urban forestry plan adopted by the city in 2003 opens with a statement of the importance of tree cover. Removal of trees for development would contradict the stated goals of the urban tree forestry plan. Evans Spring should be preserved because a significant portion of the area is a floodplain. We recognize we do need housing in Roanoke, but there are vacant commercial properties and vacant lots all over the city that need to be developed for housing. And so we ask you to preserve Evans Spring for the city, for the cool spot, and because it's the wishes of the people who live in the area. Thank you very much for staying so late.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. July 2023 was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. This year is on track to be the hottest year ever recorded. Wildfires in Greece, Italy, and Spain. Wildfires burned throughout the Amazon. Wildfires in Canada and the U.S. I won't continue because there's no need. Why complain about wildfires not in Roanoke? But as we have spent the past few months blanketed in smoke, Roanoke City leadership shows the ability to see with eyes wide open the snowballing crisis we are in, or should I say, fireballing crisis. Roanoke City explores destroying the forest at Evans Spring. Roanoke's 2020 plan set a goal of 40% tree canopy coverage. And in 2010, Roanoke's tree canopy coverage was at 47.9%. Yet a 2019 study on tree canopy distribution revealed that Roanoke now has 26% tree canopy. These facts come from planroanoke.org. Less trees mean more heat, more flooding, less habitat for wildlife, and decreased ecological diversity. These are not abstract points. This impacts us every day and in every way. Livability in Roanoke depends on a healthy ecosystem. Meaningful economic development in Roanoke depends on a healthy ecosystem. So let me ask, if you cannot place the horse before the cart, how do you suggest you are going to lead us to a better future? What type of leadership would not ensure the Climate Action Plan is integrated into the comprehensive plan? Any steps this city takes going forward must be done through the understanding of reality as it is. Economic development at the expense of the environment is not simply unsustainable, it is suicidal. Thank you.
Teresa Gill Walker.
She left and so did Stephen.
And Stephen. And our last speaker is Dan Crawford.
Good evening, Mayor Lee, members of council. I'm Dan Crawford, 2311 Kipling Street in the city. I'm also chair of the Roanoke group of the Sierra Club, so my comments are primarily environmental as appropriate. I represent the Sierra Club. There's lots to be said, very little time. I'll be back. Tonight, let's turn our attention to the Evans Spring wetland. The Evans Spring wetland is it's not a tidal wetland. It's, I forget the name of it. Anyway, there are two types of wetlands, tidal and the other that is Evans Spring. And those wetlands are protected by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality as a result of Virginia adopting the Non-Tidal Wetland Act of 2001. Now that's an important date. What it means is before 2001 we weren't protected. It was an isolated wetland and we didn't protect them until then. What does that mean? You'd be lucky to find one. We're lucky to have one right here in the city, available for preservation and presentation, and you won't find another one. The closest thing would be the wetland at South County Library, but it's nothing like the one we have here. Nowhere near as dramatic or wet. I've been there a couple of times. People have said, oh, did you take your gum boots? I would not think of trudging through that wetland, so I made sure I stayed on durable, dry terrain, because that's what we're trying to avoid, is having people go in there and trudge through it and interrupt and destroy that fragile terrain. When you think about preservation, you start out with ownership, and I might say that that 20 acres, we imagine the site necessary to preserve the wetland to be about 20 acres, because you need the wetland and a buffer. And in terms of preservation, someone has to own it to then take care of it, build the boardwalks, and establish control. And if I owned that 20 acres, I'd sell it to you for $1, and I'd take an IOU, because it can't be used for anything, right? It can't be developed. DEQ is not going to allow anyone to develop a wetland like that. So this is something I want you to think about. It needs to happen. It will be a tremendous asset to the community, to the city, something we can brag about. And I appreciate your time. I have other things to say about the Evans Spring development project, but there will be other times, other evenings for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was the last speaker.
All right. All right, there being no further business to come before the council meeting is adjourned. Thank you.